Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tim and Jim Show. I'm Tim Sohn, just hanging out here in the woods. There's bears, there's turkeys, occasional human being, and I'm excited to be here. I'm excited for the show today. I'm going to turn it over first to my friend and trusty co-host, Mr. Jim Hughes. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Tim, and I'm glad to. I got to remember which way to look, right? It's like you're over there.
Yes, so, it's the opposite, right?
I know, right? It's opposite day. And it's great to see you. And I'm in Atlanta. There's no snow. I did find out there's snow for both you and Don, so I wouldn't wish that on anyone. So I hope it melts quickly for you guys. And yeah, excited to learn about common mistakes of startups, because I think we've all made a few. And I'm sure that Don is going to be able to share with us, and maybe we'll stop making some of those mistakes. But we learn from our mistakes,
Perhaps.
right?
Here we go.
Exactly. So Don, tell us about Don Webster and what got you interested in entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. So first of all, thanks for having me, guys. You know, that intro, your guests look like they have a lot of fun. I'll wave too. So everybody's waving and having fun. A little bit about me. I grew up in the Midwest. I'm a diehard Cubs fan for anybody who's watching. Moved out here to work at Wall Street after school. That used to be a cool thing to say. I don't know if that's cool anymore. As part of working on Wall Street, we got moved to Northeast Pennsylvania as part of a relocation of all of the back office operations. 3 weeks after my family moved here, they announced the sale of the bank in the UK. And that was an opportunity for us to decide, what do we really want? And I like the fact that I could be home for dinner and coach softball and ski on the weekends. And we decided to stay, and I started the first of 4 businesses. And
Wow.
It's been a pretty great ride. I've been pretty lucky. I have 2 daughters, and I'm thrilled to be in Northeast Pennsylvania with my wife.
Awesome.
That is awesome. And Don, tell us about Techbridge. You work with Techbridge, right?
So I've been fortunate enough to work with an organization called Techbridge, which is an organization who focuses on entrepreneurship and innovation in the knowledge economy. We partner with the colleges and universities and the high schools and the private sector in the region. We're a not-for-profit. And our goal is to really help people realize their dreams. And I've been fortunate enough in my career to have a lot of people who have helped me dream. So now I'm on the other side, helping other people be the best version of themselves.
That is so cool. I think that's a really important thing you bring up too, Don, because I think a lot of times, I know even for me, we were talking before the show how I retired from the Marines, and maybe the same for you. It's like, I like helping other people succeed. That's where as I've gotten older, I know I don't look that old, but as I've gotten older, that to me is the big thing is, how can we help others succeed? And I think sounds like what you're doing with Techbridge does exactly that.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I said off mic, I'll say it on air. First of all, thank you for your service. It's a great purpose. For me, I sometimes kid that I have a defective gene. It's just one of those things that, why do you do what you do? I do it because I want to do it. It's, I saw some people who were getting in trouble with following their dreams. And it was sort of like, hey, do you want to talk about how we might be able to make that a little better? And those kind of conversations just turned into passions for me.
Very cool. So we should thank everyone for tuning in. Stefan is tuning in from Ramsey, New Jersey. He says the band is back together again. # the Tim and Jim Show.
I wonder if he got snow today in New Jersey.
Yeah, Stefan, let us know in the comments. Did you get snow in Ramsey, New Jersey? And Carl Sullivan is tuning in from the UK. He's in my live streaming course. Hello, Carl.
Nice.
And
my daughter did her postdoc at Cambridge, so that's really good.
Oh, awesome. Shout out to Cambridge.
There we go.
And Bernard says, afternoon. Afternoon, Bernard. Thank you so much for being here. So, guys, today we're going to be talking about common startup mistakes. And Don has promised us that he will turn the tables on us and ask us questions as well. So, Jim, do you want to take question number 1 for Mr. Webster?
So I guess common startup mistake number 1, Don, is, have you talked to enough prospects and customers? I mean, that's something that, that sounds like a crazy thing.
So let's there's lots of mistakes that we all make, right? I think the thing from my perspective is we all could call out 4 or 5 things where it's like, oh, I wish I could do that over again. Well, one of the interesting things that I see with aspiring entrepreneurs is there's no lack of ideas. I mean, maybe we could start there, right? I mean, there's no lack of ideas that are out there. And I think the thing from my perspective is, in order to be a successful entrepreneur, you've really got to take that idea and translate it into something, right? You've got to be able to actually take your idea and, depending on how you define success, get it over the goal line, right? Whatever that goal line is as we define success. From my perspective, one of the things that I think is really interesting is that entrepreneurs often don't talk to the people who are going to buy their product enough. They may think that they're talking to people, they're talking to friends and family, but are they really talking to people that will actually write you a check? And so I said to an entrepreneur the other day, I think you need to talk to 100 prospects. They're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, 100 prospects. I'm actually not 5, not 10, 10 times 10. I think you should talk to 100 prospects. And a prospect is somebody that you think you could sell your product to. It's not your friend, it's not your dog. It's somebody that you think could actually be interested, that you could convince that if this met their need, if this solved their pain point, that they would write you a check. Because what we often find is, through that conversation, you learn things. And the more conversations you create, the more things you learn that allow your product to get better, your product to become more refined, your product to be more successful from the perspective of, would somebody buy it? Would somebody use it? Would somebody come back? Would somebody give you feedback? Would somebody refer it, right? So for me,
Yes.
That's the place that if we learn nothing else from this this show is I think people need to talk to prospective customers more, and don't be afraid, because what's the worst thing that can happen? They tell you something that you might not want to hear, but it's that something that you might not want to hear that can really make a difference going forward in your product.
And Don, along those lines, do you think sometimes it's that whole thing of like, I got this great idea. Like, I think everybody wants to buy this cup that I have, but we don't actually go and do the research of talking to these people to find out, you know what? I've already got a cup, not interested in your cup. And so we end up wondering why we can't make sales. Is that also a part of that equation of maybe find out like research before you sink all this money into your great idea?
Sure, that's a piece of it. I think it's interesting. So we all know entrepreneurs, right? We can all think of people, either ourselves or others. What's one of those common things about entrepreneurs? They're very confident, right? And so one of the reasons you have to be confident, you almost have to be sort of clueless, because there's so much risk that you take in trying to build something new and something different, that you really have to be enthusiastic and positive. But sometimes entrepreneurs don't really want to be told that maybe there's another way, maybe there's a different approach. And so can you really be a good listener, and can you apply that listening, is a really, really interesting question that I think we need to be asking all of our aspiring business people.
That's really interesting. Jim, how many customers did you speak to before you launched your business? Talk about turning the tables.
I think I spoke to a handful, but I literally shifted my business from government contract consulting to marketing, but I also was doing a lot of research, and I found some people that were willing to be my customers as I was launching my business. Because if I just said, "Hey, I'm doing this," and then I had no customers, it would have probably been a much different story. And then I also had if you want to call it, the advantage of, because I was, retired from the military, I had an income, so it wasn't like if I didn't have a customer, like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? So I had something that not everybody gets. I had a little bit of a fallback where, like, a lot of times, and then, as you know, Tim, as a social media manager, is how I first started out. You don't always need to invest a lot of money up front. I mean, sure, you got to, register your business and those sort of things, but it wasn't like I had to put a lot of capital outlay. I worked out of my house. It wasn't like I was like renting an office building. And so I didn't have a lot of overhead to start. And I was also made sure I was making money first before I would invest in something else that was going to help grow my business. So I think that helped me. But yeah, I didn't talk to 100 people.
Well, isn't it
I
interesting
didn't
too? I
either.
mean, well, a lot of times people are like, "Oh, I'm not talking to 100 people. I'm too busy. I'm too busy building my business. I can't talk to customers. I don't have time." Let's think about that. Customers are good for business. So
Exactly.
if you're a leader of an organization, what's more important than talking to people about your products and your business, other than maybe talking to your employees, right? And listening to what they have to say, because that's how you advance whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. So maybe it's not 100 for you, but it's sure not 3 or 4. And some
Right.
people don't even do the 3 or 4, right?
Right.
If you're watching live or on the replay, let us know down below in the comments, before you started your business, how many potential customers did you speak to? We would love to know in the
Right.
comments.
And I'll bet you it's not 100. But the question that I would ask you is, why not?
It's a great question.
Yeah,
Yes.
Tim, why not?
Yes, why not?
No, I'm asking you, Tim.
There we go.
Thank you, Tim. I don't know. I was working in journalism for 12 plus years before I ended up here in the woods in Shahola, and I didn't want to commute like 2 hours to a newspaper job, and the industry was sinking at the time anyway. And I learned about social media when I was interviewing brands that were using social media, how they were using it, for different strategies. And then I figured, let me just give it a shot. I don't think I spoke to one potential customer. I just said, I have a business. Here it is. This is what I do. Can I help you?
Well, I think, there's another interesting aspect to it, which is, wait, you want me to talk to 100 people? No, I need a salesperson to do that. Well, who's the best salesperson for your organization? The person who's cranking it up, that's got the idea, right?
Absolutely.
So you need to be out asking people what they think, and you need to sort of ask for the sale. And would you buy this product if it did what I said it does? Does it solve your problem? Does it get you excited? Would you pay money for this?
Right. Exactly. So Don, common startup mistake number 2 is, do you have the right team to execute on your vision? Talk to us about that.
Okay, so this could go in a lot of different directions, right? So I don't know, for our audience, like the number one thing that most venture capitalists look at, would you guys know? In judging their decks and judging their pitches and judging their asks, what do you think it is?
Is it the team?
It's the team.
I was going to say also the business plan, but yeah.
That's the secret, is most venture capitalists, the number one thing they focus on is not the idea, but do you have the people who can make it happen?
Mhm.
Right? And so most people that are looking to invest money are pretty smart. They can kind of figure out, they've seen it so many times, right? That they're
Right.
looking to say, how do you get to the solution? How do you get to the solution times 10 in order to make their math work on their side? Because it's a numbers game. And so the real question that they've got right out of the gate is, do we have the team in place to take that really cool idea and make it a reality? And that team can come in a couple of different forms. So one is the people that do the work, right? Who are the employees? Who are the people that are actually going to make this happen? And what are their roles? And do their roles fit with what their experience is? Have they done this before? Can they do it again? The second question about ability to execute is, do you have perspective, right? So you have the people that are doing the work, but as an entrepreneur, you, by definition, we don't know everything. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know everything. Most entrepreneurs think they know a lot, right? But we don't know everything. And so where are you going to get that perspective, that safe and trusted guidance? When the rubber meets the road, you've got a tough question and you're not sure what way to go, where do you go? Well, I like to suggest that you need an advisory board. And the advisory board, the purpose of the advisory board is to be there for you, not to tell you what to do, but to be there for you to help you understand the challenges and opportunities that you're facing and to give you support, to be a resource, maybe for introductions, maybe for finance, but most importantly, to give you, the entrepreneur, the tools and resources you need so that you can give the tools and the resources your team needs to them. So there's layers. There's the team, there's the advisory board, and then there's your strategic partners. If you're an early stage entrepreneur, oftentimes you don't really want to spend a lot of money on things like legal services, things like insurance, things like accounting. And I will tell you that becomes a huge mistake. And in some cases, you're sort of whistling by the graveyard because it's like, well, if something bad doesn't happen, then I don't have to pay. And then you get into there was the old commercial, pay me now or pay me later. Well, something goes wrong or goes sideways, and then you're in deep, right? So strategic partners, who's your lawyer? Who's your banker? Who's your accountant? I sometimes call them the Holy Trinity. You should be able to talk to them about just about anything. But who else is your advisors? Who are those people that can give you guidance on balance, culture, strategy, customer, happiness, right? Insights. So I think there's different layers, and I'd be happy to answer anything else that you guys think in that regard. But it's really, people who are looking to invest money in businesses, they're really looking at who's your team? Who's your team?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I was going to say, Don, do you feel like because I'm still, and I think Tim to an extent, but I know he's got a couple of people that work with him. I'm a solopreneur, but I do have a team, right? I've gone out and I found, a CPA, and I've got lawyers, and because I realize I can't do it all myself because I want to save a couple bucks, because I'm really not saving myself a couple bucks if I'm doing things that I'm not good at. And I think that's where people make that mistake, is that, I'm going to do my own bookkeeping. I'm going to do all this stuff that I didn't even like in college, and I'm going to do it because I'm in business. And then they're not talking to those 100 people, as an example.
Well, we talk about bootstrapping. Entrepreneurs oftentimes, until they get to that golden round or whatever, they don't feel like they've got the financial resources to be successful. That they're really running on fumes all the time, right? And so, I don't really have the money for those professional services. Well, what I would suggest to you is you need to find relationships, and you need to find partners, and you need to find members of the team that can help your organization be the best version of itself, right? And what you learn over time is there's a better use of my time than doing the accounting if I'm not an accountant.
Right. Abby Jules says, watching live, I didn't ask the customers because I knew the market well and that my service was in demand. My challenge has been the pricing and overregulation of the industry.
Well, isn't that something that you could be, Abby, asking your customers about is what would you pay for this product? I mean, I think you shouldn't be afraid to ask people about those kinds of things, because they'll help you understand. I mean, there is market competition that you can sort of benchmark your pricing against. But if you're a new product or a new service, where do you set your price? And a lot of times what I find is entrepreneurs are afraid to ask for the price that they deserve, right?
I know I do.
Well, but yeah, I think there's another opportunity to be talking to prospects. Talk to them about the price they're willing to pay.
Yeah. Well, even like for me, I've had a business coach for a few years now, and I think that was one of those things that I wish I had done earlier, because I think we need kind of that third party accountability person, because otherwise, like to your point, Tim, like, what should I charge? Where my coaches always challenge me, like, have you raised your rates? Because part of it is until people start saying no, you're not charging enough. So there's a thought.
Absolutely. And so if you've got trusted voices on your advisory board, then you've got the ability to go to them and ask for guidance on things that you might not have the ability to talk to about with your team.
Exactly. And Abby saying, thank you. That is so true. Jim, actually, I think what we're going to do, we're going to take a brief commercial break for 15 seconds from our sponsor, StreamYard, and we will be back on the flip side.
Great.
Is this a dancing show? What show are we on?
You guys are rocking the sweatshirts. Definitely rocking the sweatshirts.
Thank you. And thank you, Don, so much for all the valuable information you're providing today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in here on this episode of the Tim and Jim Show. Jim, you want to take number 3 for Don?
Don, common startup mistake number 3. What's your level of commitment to the venture?
So this is one of my favorite ones for all of the entrepreneurs that I have heard say to me, yeah, Don, I can multi-process. I can multi-process. We can make this happen. I can do that full-time job and I can do this full-time job. I can do 2 full-time jobs. I can do 3 or 4 full-time jobs because I've got a really good team. What's your level of commitment to the venture? So the question that I would ask you is, if you're doing 4 or 5 things, are you doing them all well? So what's your level of commitment to the venture? I appreciate many entrepreneurs need to figure out how to pay the bills. And so they're doing this in their spare time because they've got their primary job that covers the benefits or covers the rent, and that we're spinning this up. But the thing that I would say is, from an investor perspective, if you're looking to go out and have people invest in you, the thing that those investors are really going to want to know is, how can you move as fast as possible to achieve the objectives that you've laid out in your plan? And if you're not 25 hours a day, are you really that it factor that is going to be successful?
Yeah,
that's true. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I know, right? This goes back to having a business coach. I was spending a lot of time like being a volunteer and being on boards, and it's like, but I wasn't focusing on my business, right? You need to focus on what's important, and then maybe down the road you can spend more time, doing things in the community and things of that nature. Because if you don't, right, these volunteer things aren't going to pay your bills. You got to pay your bills with your business. So you got to be focused. You got to be there for your customer. And if you're not there for your customer because you're out doing all these other things, I think sometimes, right, Don, I think it's kind of to your point, less is more, right? You don't need to be doing 15 different things. And if you can't commit to that venture, maybe it's not time to do that venture yet until you're, maybe it's setting aside more capital, because you got to be able to make that jump, especially if you had a full-time job and you're trying to start something on the side.
Right. And what's interesting about this is I can say these things because I have the scars to show for them. And many of us do. I mean, time is one of those things that we all could use more of. Time is one of those things that we could all leverage in many ways, personally and professionally, to a greater degree. But I think the real question is, where are you spending your time? And then the other side of this is probably the financial question, which is, what's your level of commitment to the venture? Are you putting your financial resources towards these goals? Or are you expecting someone else to do it? Because if you're not willing to put your own cash in, why should someone else?
That is a great point. That is a wonderful point. All right. So mistake number 4 is, do you have an advisory board? You already talked a little bit about this, Don. Is there anything else you wanted to say with regards to advisory boards?
Yeah, so this actually came up. This comes up again because I think that there's two kinds of advisory boards, right? There's your business advisory board, but I'll specifically say from a gender perspective, we men are very bad at asking for guidance and help, right? Are you willing to share sort of where you're at, really, on a personal level? How you're doing, and whether or not you are accomplishing the things that people have heard you say you're going to accomplish. And so advisory boards, I'll just go back to this point for a second. The job of the advisory board is not to tell you what to do. It is to be good listeners, to leverage their experience, and to provide guidance when asked, right? So that the entrepreneur has a safe place to go to explore, right? And so are we willing to do that on a personal level? I mean, I'll ask you guys, do you guys have what I would call personal advisors, mentors, friends that you can talk about, how are you doing? Like, I'll ask you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was also going to ask the question, how do you equate maybe say advisory board and say mastermind? Are they similar, or do you see that as different? Because I think sometimes even like I'm in a couple of masterminds where like we're all able to like you said, bounce things off of people, and there's it's, I guess if you want to call it, it feels like a safe space to nobody's going to yell at you. If anything, I look at Tim as part of my advisory board. We're able to bounce things off each other from a non-attribution standpoint, but also sometimes
Same
it's
here.
like, hey, hold me accountable, right?
That's exactly it. It's hold me accountable. And that's one of the things that I find with entrepreneurs is at times they don't want to be told what to do because they've got the right answer. And so it's like, I'm going to walk through a wall to accomplish this. Great. But are you willing to be accountable as you break that wall down, right? Because it's more than just you in many cases. So on the personal side, it's really people that are willing to spend time to be good listeners and just to repeat back, hey, I thought you said that you wanted to be blah, blah, blah. Well, where are you at on that? Well, I'm not really focused on that right now. Well, how come? Is that still important to you? Yeah, it's really important to you. I thought you wanted to spend more time with your family. Are you doing that? No, I've been really busy. Well, how can we change that, right? And it's not meant to be a threat. It's meant to be a support.
Right. Yeah, I definitely consider Jim a mentor, a colleague. I think we hold ourselves accountable to an extent. We have conversations.
To some extent, you need to have the conversation to say, is it okay if I ask you hard questions? Because
Right.
it's convenient when I can ask you the easy questions that I already know the answers to. But am I allowed to push back on the, hey, tell me more about that thing over there? Oh, I don't really want to talk about that. Well, how come?
Right. Jim, am I allowed to do that?
Absolutely.
Why, thank you. So Jim, you want to take mistake number 5? And as everyone is, we're wrapping up the show here soon, but we want to thank you all for being here. If you have any remaining questions for Don, please put them in the comments. I'm sure he'd be happy to answer them for you, and just so grateful for his time and all of your time and Jim's time too, of course.
Yes.
So Jim,
common mistake number 5, Don, do you have sufficient funding?
Right. So I think one of the things that is an elephant in the room for many startups is, what's it going to take for me to get this to launch? What's it going to take for me to get this to success? So one of the things you need to do is you need to define success, but you really need to have some people sort of helping you understand, do you not have enough landing? Can you land the plane because there's enough runway, right? Do you have enough runway to get where you need to go? And in many cases, I think it comes in some just big picture questions. So for example, do you have enough to get you through the next 6 months? I would tell you 6 months probably isn't long enough because it's going to take you 6 months to do 100 customer interviews, right? But do you have the ability to keep this thing going for a year? Because if somebody buys your product, they're not going to want you to go away. So have you really been honest with yourself and your family and your team about where's the cash to keep this thing going? And I would say the question that I would ask you is, do you have a year's worth of money to make this happen? Because if the answer is no, then you should be talking to your advisory board, or you'd be talking to your friends about, okay, what does that mean to my customers, to my family, to this effort, right? And don't be afraid to have those conversations, because they provide insights and direction and maybe energy or reality.
Energy and reality, both which we have on the Tim and Jim show right now. So the final startup mistake is, what does success look like, Don?
Well, so that kind of summed it up for me. It was 5 questions plus a bonus. I would ask my friends who are listening today, thank you for tuning in. Actually, you've spent your valuable time with us today. I appreciate that. What does success look like for you and your team? And don't be afraid to embrace that, because entrepreneurship comes in many levels, in many forms, right? So does success. But let's talk about what that looks like, and then we can aspire to achieve it. But if we don't really all agree on where we're going, how are we going to get there? So what does success look like for you? That's a really important question. I think sometimes entrepreneurs have this great idea, or they have this great product, or their great service. Is launching that success?
Right. I think a lot of times too, Don, right? As much as we talk about success, it's like, what's your exit plan? Like, what do what happens if you didn't want to do the business anymore? Are you going to be able to walk away? Are you going to be able to sell it? I think that's the thing that sometimes people get stuck in. It's like, well, I can't get rid of this business now that I started it, because
Well, a lot
I
of
don't have a
times,
fallback.
sorry, you're exactly right. Because a lot of times that we look at the sort of the short-term view of success as opposed to the long-term view of success. And long-term view of success can be very different. And includes potentially, how do we transition out of this? Is that even a conversation? If many who are just starting, that's like a thing I don't even want to talk about. All right, but how, is success growth? What is growth?
Right. Yeah, because I know for me, Tim, I know we've talked about this before. I don't know that I want to have employees, right? But I maybe want to have a team of collaborators, and that's one of those things I have to decide. Would I want to have all these people relying on me, dealing with all the taxes and everything that come along with that? Or do I want to just continue what I'm doing? And then what does that really mean success wise? At what point is that, have I gotten to where I want to? And then again, like if I decided to shut down the business, what does that look like?
And
I
what
think
does
those are
success look like? Because success doesn't necessarily need to be driven by a metric called employee count.
right.
Right. Exactly. All right. Well, this has been a great conversation, Don. Do you want to share with our audience anything about the business plan competition you have going on, or anything else?
Well, so thank you for that. So one of the things that we do, we are in our 19th year of hosting a 19th annual business plan competition in Northeast Pennsylvania. We have 2 divisions. We have a collegiate division and a non-collegiate division. I was fortunate enough to be there at the beginning. We have teams from the very first year who are still in business and still supporting the events. It's really been a wonderful success story. We actually have our awards event next Thursday night on Facebook Live. And so check us out
Awesome.
at Techbridge, TEC Bridge, Techbridge. And come check out the aspiring entrepreneurs in Northeast Pennsylvania. It's a really a really great story, to tell you the truth.
Awesome.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Oh, of course. And if people want to connect with you beyond this live stream, is there any social media or other ways that people could find out more about
probably
you?
the easiest would be to find me on LinkedIn. I mean, I'm on all of the social, but that's probably the easiest place to find me. And I would love to answer any questions or help in any way.
Very cool. Great,
Well,
great information, and great points to ponder as we get ready to, we're only about a third of the year is done. So you still got 2/3 to go. And if you listen to Don, you can maybe turn things around.
Thank you for the
Exactly.
opportunity today.
Thank you. And Jim, do you want to tell everyone who our guest is next week?
We have a guest next week. Of
I
course,
heard a
we have
rumor.
a guest. We have a rumor. Well, very excited to have Mark Schaefer as our guest. He recently released his book, Cumulative Advantage, which I read cover to cover. So I'm excited. Very eye-opening book. And actually, I've read all his books. So if you haven't, you've got a week to do it. Get on it, folks, and be ready to ask questions.
Thank you for your time today, guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank
Don.
you, everyone. And see you next week for another episode of the Tim and Jim Show. Have a great week, everyone.
Take care.